Are you tired of wasting time on entertainment that doesn't bring you a sense of community? Do you feel like people are trying to force you to take a side in this silly culture war? Does your media have you feeling too conservative, too woke, too religious, too heathenish, not enough whatever, like a freak? That's because you're not a caricature. You're a real person. You're messy, and you don't fit into a box. Good news, we're freaks too.
Would you like to melt your stress away? Get connected to a community of other misfits? Maybe listen to the misfits? Stop feeling like a lonely outsider surrounded by people trying to enlist you in a war you want no part of. Become a contented member of a community that requires only that you live your best life and leave others to live theirs.
Feel a sense of belonging while opting out of the culture war. This is Peace Freaks. All right. Welcome, one and all, to Peace Freaks. I'm Nikki P here, as always, with my lovely wife, co-host Lizzie. How we doing there, baby?
Hi, y'all.
She said hi, y'all.
I sure did.
She thought you'd respect that.
No, I just felt like throwing out a y'all because we talked to someone from Tennessee earlier today, so got my countryside.
Oh, and you don't like to be offensive to them and do it while you're actually on the phone with them?
No, I just wasn't feeling it then.
When you were actually talking to the person from Tennessee, like you weren't feeling it.
Right. I didn't say it made sense.
It makes no sense. Personally, I like to say all the really offensive stuff when I've got them right there and judge their opinions.
I don't find saying y'all offensive though. That's how I used to talk.
Listen,
Texas.
Listen, Yins don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, Yens is not. I don't know what that is.
Pittsburgh.
So, is that like ridding up a place or something?
I don't know. They have a lot of weird fucking words in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
If we have any Pittsburgh people, any of my family that listens, y'all talk weird.
There you go.
Real weird. Anyways, folks, welcome to episode number 94. We got a fun one in store for you here.
Yeah, we do.
We're going to be talking to Mr. J.W. Weatherman about my midlife crisis.
And, some useful ideas that someone that wants to, build their skills and maybe create some new options for themselves could possibly take up there. So
Look, how do you feel about it, Liz? How do you feel about my midlife crisis?
I mean, calling it a midlife crisis isn't really okay with me because I think when people hear that, they think you're thinking your life is half over. It's really more of like a third of life crisis, I think.
Honey, let's be honest. It's probably half over.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't be half over. You've got things to live for. You should be like shooting for 90.
Liz, that would make me 70. 70 is still pretty fucking old.
I guess.
I mean, I think what is the average life expectancy for a man? What, 72? For our generation, it's probably not even that.
Come on, the technology is getting better every day. I think you're selling yourself short.
Well, that's a few episodes down the road when we talk to Jacob Lindsay. You know, who he's living to 700.
Yeah, man. I want to be on the train with Jake there, man.
I'm okay with it, unless you die, baby. In which case, I won't last that long.
You're like, screw this noise.
I'll have no need for it. I'll have done what I needed to do in life.
Yeah, let's just stick around and be awesome. We'll outlive all the crazy people.
I gotta live long enough to protect you and Irma. That's what I gotta do.
We did have that conversation with somebody. That wasn't this conversation that dudes kind of have to have stuff to live for, right?
I think you can have that conversation all the time.
Yeah, we probably do.
Everybody needs to have stuff to live for.
That's just true.
So, hey, but we're going to have one out 2 weeks in a row. It has not been like that through quarantine, so I'm pretty pumped about that.
Yeah, thanks for bearing with us there, folks, while we were, trying to get our heads on straight.
I still don't know that they're on straight, but they're at least on.
Yeah. My Lord of the Rings podcast, kind of came back for a week. They were like, we're going to be back, but, anxiety. So we're going to put this out now, and we'll see you guys in a few more weeks. I was like, all right, you know what? I feel you. The struggle is real.
She's like, I can respect that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, this conversation, there's been a couple conversations we've had recently. This kind of started it. And strangely enough, my midlife crisis all centers around Bitcoin.
I mean, as
I call it a midlife crisis because that's what it feels like to me.
That's fine. I get where you're coming from.
I'm talking about giving up on things I've done my entire life and picking up new interests and hobbies and careers and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is kind of the definition of a midlife crisis.
As you do. Yeah, I think that's, if you're going to quote John Mayer, he talked about a quarter life crisis. So you could probably just have it whenever it happens.
And folks, this is what I live with. Literally every conversation somehow circles back to John Mayer.
Pretty much. Or Tolkien or Did I already get hobbits in the conversation somewhere?
I just assumed hobbits were in the conversation by virtue of we were having the conversation.
Right.
You married a hobbit.
Yeah, pretty much.
She was very clear. That's why she married me.
My type is literally hobbity. I just,
Yeah.
yeah.
She's like, I just like a squidgy hobbit.
That's what I'm going for.
That's what she's into. Now, I don't know what she means by calling me squidgy. Hopefully that's a good thing, but whatever. So, all right, folks. Well, we will jibba jabba just a little bit less, and we'll get right on into this interview with Mr. J.W. Weatherman. Thank you so much for meeting us today. Specifically, the reason I asked you on is because when you dive into the Bitcoin thing, and I've been talking to Mr. Sue, and sometimes I get the impression like he's got an audience he's trying to talk to, and I'm not exactly a newbie. Like the philosophy, none of it doesn't make sense to me. I've never had anybody explain any of the tech to me that went way over my head.
Yeah.
But for me, my issue has always been, how does this factor into my life? Because there's a practical element of living, especially like when I'm not, a lot of the guys that you find in that sphere are dudes in their 20s that literally that's all their life is about, is Bitcoin or the revolution against the state.
Right.
And while that's great, and I love that those guys have the ability to do that, and 10 years ago, so did I.
Right.
But I don't find myself in that position now. I find myself where I have responsibilities. I have a wife and a kid. I have to deal with the realities of the economy as it is. And add to that, I actually work for a company that has Bitcoin ATMs out there. So, I hands-on deal with some of the shit that we have to deal with as far as, the real world goes.
Right.
But, so I'm not an idiot on it. But I've had difficulty kind of seeing or because I'm not so immersed in it, that I don't see what's a way for someone like myself to kind of dive into the market and have it be a part of the bigger financial picture. Because to me, it always just comes back to, for me, all I see it end up being is a long-term investment. It's the way I have to think about it.
Yeah, no.
And I'm not sure if there's another, I guess the thing I always come back to is so for the past couple of years, my big thing is I have a lot of debt from when I was making poor decisions when I had a kid, and I just kept throwing money at everything that was highly leveraged money. And I wasn't an Austrian yet, so I didn't have all the sound economic voices in my ears. It was just, oh my God, I got a kid. Everything feels like an emergency, and I just don't want to fuck up her life. So I just kept throwing credit at it.
Right.
And so for the past 4 years, me and Liz's goal has been, let's just pay off everything we can. That's our primary concern, to try and get the fiat monster away.
Right.
But then the question arises, so it's if I have to think of it as strictly as a long-term position, well then, do I want to worry about it now at all, or do I worry about it once I handle my fiat problems? Or is there some intermediary where leveraging that can actually help me in the short term? And these all seem like bigger picture questions that I'm not even sure how to begin thinking about them. And anytime you talk to the standard Bitcoin people, it's like, no, dude, just throw everything you got in a big bucket because fiat's going away. I'm like, well, great, but I don't want to get kicked out of my apartment right now.
Exactly. Totally. No, that makes a lot of sense, man. I think I do have a little bit of an answer for you, and that is, I think you're doing the right thing, because there's a lot to get excited about with Bitcoin. There's a lot to get excited about from the angle of human slavery and the way that that's evolved over time, and that we're part of this very corrupt system, and a lot of people die as a result of it. Progress is impeded. If you know somebody that died of a disease in the last 10 years, there's a really good chance that shouldn't have happened, that we could have figured that out if basically all of our human capacity wasn't getting just leached at an ever increasing rate off to the state and to these politicians and these mobsters.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to get excited about on that angle. There's also a lot to get excited about from the standpoint of like an investor, right? And there's this new technology, and it solves this problem. And it's really interesting because it's kind of like the internet, where it's going to solve a lot of problems and it's going to be this revolution, but you can buy a chunk of it, right? Like you can buy a piece of the internet sort of real estate. So that's very exciting and compelling on that side as well. But at the end of the day, most people probably shouldn't have anything to do with this thing. Like I come at it from the standpoint of, look, it's not money yet. And when you're trying to provide for your family, you need to try to minimize debt. You definitely need to maximize income, which means developing skills and have money flowing in. And there's an evolution of these things, right? Like if you're in debt, maybe now isn't the time to be a high tech investor, even though it's a super exciting space, right? And even though there's a lot going on, there was a lot going on 20 years ago when I first started investing in high tech, and I would have said the same thing back then that I'm saying now. Develop skills. From my perspective, there's no better investment that you can make than learning to code. Pretty much everything's getting automated away except for automating. So I tell almost everybody, there are exceptions to that rule, of course, but tell almost everybody, look, learn to code, become really competent at that. When you're making six figures, then you can get to the point where you're looking at where to invest your money. And as much as I hate fiat, right, I'm still an Austrian, so I recognize the reality that money is a medium of account, unit of account, store of value, and medium of exchange, right? So right now, the reality is that the most saleable asset, the thing that our society uses for that, is US dollars. It makes it the most stable. It sucks. I mean, it is part of this very corrupt system. But if you got to pay rent, you got to pay rent in that. And if you're going to pay rent in 6 months and save for it, you probably should save for it in that. At least for now. I mean, it could flip. The weird thing is it could flip any second. So there is a hedge your bet scenario.
And that's the thing that's always like, you question what you're doing, because if you got enough money invested when that flip happens, well, then you just made a ton of money, and paying off your debt is going to be much easier with the money that's actually valuable versus the money that no longer is.
Right.
What does any of that debt mean when you have something that's worth 50 times as much because it's just that switch was flipped?
Right.
So there's a sense of like, am I going to miss the boat and then just be the same place I am now? Is there a way to leverage it and make it more valuable? Like, should you play the waters kind of halfway? And like, I do have Bitcoin. It's not like I don't have any, just because sometimes when I'm testing the machines at work, I'll just put my money in there and throw it into my wallet, because why the hell not? Right. You know, it's 20 bucks here or there is whatever. But do you want to start making big moves is the thing that frustrates me.
Yeah, it is kind of, it's interesting because I've gone back and we're in a weird place in history, I think, where there's so many like massive tectonic shifts.
We're right on the cusp of something. Like it just, I don't know.
Right. On multiple sides, right? Like there's all this positive stuff happening where billions of people are being taken out of poverty, and they're being put in a place where they're actually participating in the economy. So if you just took that one factor, you would expect all of us to be 10 times richer within the next decade or two, right? Just because population's exploding and these people are going to be actually contributing, it's going to be amazing. And then if you ignore that and you just focus on what's going on with fiat, you'd think, oh, this is the end of the world, right? We're never going to survive this. And then you have Bitcoin, which is its whole other rabbit hole. So on one hand, I could say like, look, man, this is the advice I would give my son: develop skills, be conservative, worry about life, and don't get so stressed out that you end up killing yourself or not being a good father, right? Like that's or husband. That's the stuff that really matters. And hedge that. But then
I live by the Douglas Adams rule.
What's that?
Don't panic. Yeah.
Right. But there is another part of me that like there's a temptation to be like, look, man, if you're so far tied up right now, then you could play
just let that crumble away with the system.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that's like, you know what, man, just go all in, right? Like go get a mortgage, get a bunch of credit cards, put it into Bitcoin, lose it, go bankrupt, and start over. Because a lot of people do that every 7 to 10 years anyway.
Yeah, that's a strategy. Yeah,
that would literally kill my soul. Like I probably, when it was at its worst, I probably should have declared bankruptcy, but it literally, like, I don't know, there's something internally in me, and I realize it's fake money. I realize the game is stacked against me, but I have that sense of I have to play fair because I'm the only one who has to account for that at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So like, if I didn't pay off my shit, it would really, really bother me.
Yeah, and it's not worth that because
Yeah,
your health and your stress is going to have a much bigger impact on your long-term life, right?
absolutely.
Like we're navigating this crazy storm, and if you're taking good care of your wife and your daughter, then you're fine. I don't know if it's your daughter. Maybe you said that earlier, but as long as you're taking care of your kids and your wife, then you're fine. Everything else is it's a lot of guessing, man. Nobody knows what the hell's going on. We're all just winging.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, and you said the minute you get in those Bitcoin communities, especially like when you're very specifically with I think it's the maximalists, I think what they're called, and they're just any of those guys is so certain about everything they say, and I'm like, guys,
well.
The only answer you get is just yes, throw everything you can possibly throw at, and don't worry about anything else. So like, well, my kids got to eat, and that comes in with actual cash. So
right.
How do I pay the guy at the grocery store with that Bitcoin?
So actually, you should link to the Bitcoin Maximalist Manifesto. I wrote it a couple of years ago, back when maximalist was mostly an insult.
Okay.
I decided to kind of play the Christian card, and we'll just take the insult and turn it into our brand.
Yeah,
oh, great. Okay.
And that kind of outlines the Austrian economics and the technology that you'd have to kind of grasp. So I'm definitely a Bitcoin maximalist. I think a few people have referred to me as like the maximalist.
Yeah.
But that only means that like in my opinion, and the way that I'd like to define the word, that only means that I understand that Bitcoin is the best technology or the best tool we've ever found to use as money, right? Like the best asset we've ever found to use as money.
Yeah.
And that I understand enough about economics to know that money is one thing, and that without government coercion, we do as trading partners coalesce on one thing. That's what money means.
Yeah.
So I'm super confident. And that's why there's part of me that's like, man, I want to tell you to take the conservative path. But on the other hand, like it depends on how desperate you are, because I do feel like I feel better. Like I bought Bitcoin at 17,500 and now it's, what is it, 7,000. But I feel better about this investment as a high-tech investment than I felt about anything else. And I've made a crazy, unreasonable amount of money investing in high-tech.
Yeah.
And I still feel really good about it.
So that's what's funny, because everything is so much about like this precipice thing. So one of the issues is that, so we've been working diligently for 4 years, and we were, barring this coup ever happening, we were about 11 months away from having our financial position change, because like the car was going to be paid off. One of the consolidation loans was going to go away, and we're talking freeing up like $1,000 a month when that happens. So like what other debt there was would be paid off very, very quickly. And so like we were on the precipice of having our financial position change drastically already. The coup threw a bit of a monkey wrench into that, like took away some of my income, halted some other income. So like it slowed down the progress we're making. And it's like I'm like, I've been saying it for the past 6 months, like, we're just another year and a half, Liz, and this is all over. Right. And then bam, well, sorry, right at the goal line here, let me kick the ball back down the field for you a little bit.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I didn't feel desperate until like all of a sudden this happens, and now I'm starting to feel desperate again. And it's just, it's a weird position.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of funny because like we were talking about before about like how I'm doing mentally with all this sort of stuff. Like financially, I'm really in a very solid position. I'm invested in some startups that will only be more valuable as people get more price sensitive. And then I have, assets, a little bit of Bitcoin and some other things that should perform well in a downturn.
Mm-hmm.
But like the experience that I'm having with COVID is probably not that different from everybody else, right? Like even though I'll probably end up richer when all this is over, it's still stressing me out, because what we're seeing with like the state gaining more power is that like we're all very connected, right? Like the quality of life that my grandkids are going to have, and the quality of life of the grandkids of somebody that let's just use the extreme and say some dude that's been really lazy and just likes to drink beer all the time. That's not going to be that big of a difference, right? Like
oh no, absolutely. Like for me, I'm not scared. None of what's going on scares me so much as it saddens me, because I look at the future that my daughter's going to inherit, and she's not going to have a lot of the freedoms and the things that I had at my disposal in her life in the ways that we had them. Most likely.
Yeah. On the other hand, we have Bitcoin and it's doing really well. And there is a business model that drives all of this like COVID and craziness.
Yeah.
And that is this centralized, fiat currency, the central bank slavery, right? So we are, on the other hand, seeing the technology for the first time that could make central bank slavery unprofitable in the way that the Industrial Revolution made racial slavery unprofitable. And that's really exciting. So there's so much on the horizon. And, the good thing about that is that we'll all be beneficiaries of that, even if you're not in a position to be a high-tech investor and throw a bunch of money into Bitcoin right now. Or you don't have the personality to just be like, all right, we're going to do something crazy and, go all in and declare bankruptcy and see if we end up going to jail for it or if we get away with it. I wouldn't have had the stones to do that either. So, but even if you're not doing that, if Bitcoin works, it's going to make a big impact on global productivity. And freedom to be able to buy and sell with each other and reducing, this, crazy expansion of state power. So everybody gets to benefit from that if it works as well. So I think in a way you don't have to worry about missing out. If it works, we're all going to be way better off. If it doesn't, even if you don't own any, it almost doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, eventually there's going to be a transitional period where people are going to be moving and like you're going to have to get Bitcoin and your boss will start paying you in it or whatever. Like, that'll just have to happen at some point. So it's not like eventually I'm just not going to be able to pay my bills because
Yeah, exactly.
I just won't work for the guy that pays fiat anymore.
Exactly. I mean, there's, and it's not the first opportunity that you guys have missed to make a ton of money. If you bought Amazon at the right time, you would have made a ton of money, right?
Right.
So it's not like this only happens once. Maybe to this scale, and with this degree, like the cheapness of Bitcoin and the confidence that I have in it are really weird, right? I don't expect this to happen again in my lifetime. But if all you're looking for is an opportunity to become really, really wealthy, I would say do the normal thing, like build up some skills that make you valuable enough to where you have money that you actually need to invest and then invest that money wisely. And if Bitcoin isn't there, there'll be something else that you can wisely invest in it.
Okay. Well, I know I had a friend who'd sent me a thing for Springboard and was looking at data analytics the other day because I have skills and stuff, but most of my life is spent, kind of dealing with music and doing music stuff and, dealing with audio and things like that. But while those are skills, none of them feels leverageable enough in a way to do for me what I want to do for my family. And so I have recently been really considering what would I do moving forward in the tech sector and like what's the kind of path for that. But because it was never something I considered, the tech for me was I'd worry about a little bit about computers and mostly about, audio software.
Yeah.
Then I'm just not even sure like what's that path look like. I'm a fucking 35-year-old dude who's works with electricity and guitars.
Yeah, actually, I can tell you exactly what it looks like. I mean, I've seen people do exactly that in the last couple of years. One of the guys that was probably responsible for more code on MathBot than anybody else was this guy, Richard. And I want to say he's probably 2 years, maybe 2.5 years into his career now. But he worked in the construction industry. Mm-hmm. And about 2.5 years ago, he was like, this sucks. I need to make a transition. So he did basically what I would tell you that you should do. And now he's making, somewhere around six figures. I don't know exactly, but he's doing really, really well. And there's not a lot of industries where you can kind of count on something like that.
Yeah.
There's just so much demand for software development. And it's not terribly hard to learn it. So what I would say as far as the path goes is play MathBot. Yeah, I'm showing my own project, but...
Well, no, just for the record, my daughter already has played MathBot. I heard you on, I think, Tom Woods a year or two ago.
Yeah.
And immediately came home and said, hey, Irma, check this out, because...
Nice.
While I may have fucked up my life, we'll work for you. We'll start you early. We were just right before we were on here. We were talking about setting up an IBC account for her.
Nice.
Just to kind of
nice.
If we're gonna play the fiat game, let's do that. So like, my positions have changed. Like I kind of when the coup happened, I think I made a life decision that I am going to be moving more away from music personally.
Yeah.
It's been useful to a degree It's made me money. But I don't even, coming out of this, I don't know that I ever see it really being able to do that again, because I don't know how psychologically this is going to impact people as far as live performance goes. People may never again go out and see live music just because of the amount of psychological damage that hyping it up the way that this has been hyped up has done to people.
Yeah.
I'm sure you, much like myself, we can look at the numbers, and probably did look at the numbers back in, February, and see what was going on. But everybody else just listens to what the news tells them about what's going on, and they see a very different picture than I see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, but I think what you're kind of going through is something that I've seen happen a lot.
Midlife crisis, is that what they're?
Well, so what I would say is, like, music is sort of like modeling or something like that, where there's very few people that do well in it. It's maybe modeling isn't the best example, but there's careers like being an actor, right? Where if you do really well, you make a crazy amount of money. It's sort of like this almost winning the lottery experience. But so many people enjoy it and want to be part of that task, let's say, that it's really hard.
It's oversaturated.
Yeah, exactly. There's more supply of people that are willing to be an actor than there is demand of people, for people to be actors. And so what that means is that the average income for an actor isn't that good. And you can be, Tom Hanks or something and do super well. But in general, you're not going to do super well. And you can even see that within something like software, and I think this is probably changing a little bit because the demand is coming up so much. But 10 years ago, if you were going into software development and you decided you wanted to be a game developer, you were looking at probably a 30% pay cut to work in the games industry instead of working on spreadsheets or something like that. That was the size.
Like,
yeah, the difference between building, I don't know, like a environmental control system and the next hit game would probably be a 30 to 40% income premium. And once you actually start writing code, you realize that it's fun either way, because you're solving these little, the best analogy is probably like playing Sudoku puzzles or crossword puzzles. It's very much like that. So when you're solving those little problems as part of, a flight control system or as part of a video game, the day-to-day experience isn't that much different. But
it's code one way or the other.
Right, exactly. But the demand was so big because you have a lot of kids coming out of college that really want to work on the next hit game. So there's always that dynamic in play, but you wouldn't be alone in being a software developer that started in their mid-30s and wanted to be a musician. I think that might be the typical career path now, actually.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Well, I know the guys over at Good Morning Liberty, I think that was what they did. They were musicians until, it's probably isn't going to make me millionaires, so how about we transition? I think they write code for medical software now or something.
Yeah, and they probably make six figures plus, and they probably don't hate their job at all. There's a lot of similarities in between between math and music, right? There's definitely an overlap between the personalities that enjoy those problems, and you probably like it a lot.
Hey, it means the world to Liz and I that you spend the time listening to us. And I'd hate to lose you to another podcast, but I simply have to tell you about my buddy Sean's podcast, The Porcupine Perspective. If you like your liberty raw and unfiltered with just a hint of deep melancholic brooding, then The Porcupine Perspective is the podcast for you. They ponder big themes and real questions. This is hands down one of my favorite podcasts. So go subscribe to the Porcupine Perspective so it can be your second favorite. Oh no, I think I would enjoy it. It's just, I was like literally I was performing at 4 years old, like in front of people. Like it was just always the thing that I did.
Right.
And in high school, that was my way I made money. I played cover bands. To this day, like I said, I did lose income through all this because I actually make decent money performing. I go out and do cover shows on weekends, and I make between $50 and $100 an hour, which isn't a bad gig. I can go and hang out at a bar on a Friday and Saturday night and make good money or make at least decent money. So it's like it's never.
Dude, do both. Get free drinks and work for 40 hours.
Right.
Have a good time and build some stuff people need at the same time.
Well, no, and that's my thing. Like I'm gonna my goal thing is I'm just gonna stop really kind of pursuing that. For me, I'm content to kind of let that be a side gig. Any aspirations of like making it more than that. Like I could really hustle and go and find a whole ton of new gigs. The stress of that, because it's such a stagnant industry, honestly. Like the bars that book people generally book people that they've booked for 20 years because they don't want to book anybody.
Right.
So they just say same as last year and then do it.
Right.
Even though I have a far better product than any of those guys. And anyone who has taken the risk and tried me knows that for sure. But so moving forward as a middle-aged man looking to do that, are there like companies that like help accelerate that you think are worthwhile companies, or is it just, do I go find a forum and start trying to shadow somebody in something, or
what?
Aside from start with 10 hours of Bitcoin.
Right. Oh, that's my Bitcoin course. So I would say that the overlap there is that in that course, I go through how to make money. And one of the things that I emphasize is how to go about like becoming an employee that makes a lot of money, because there's kind of there's one chart in there that even if you don't care about Bitcoin, is worth probably going through the lectures to see. And that is this chart that just shows how you go from sort of the most like the most difficult way to make money to the easiest way to make money. And speculation, right? Investing, making bets on new technologies or new businesses is sort of the apex of that, but you don't want to start out doing that. You have to develop expertise. Like I would never invest in the industry or the energy industry, right? Like I'm not surprised oil went to zero. I didn't know anything about it. I don't know what the heck kind of games get played. So you're not going to find me investing in that. I'm only going to invest in things that I have a lot of expertise in. So nobody can compete with me, right?
It's one of Stapleton's things he always harps on. If you're going to invest, make sure you invest in things you know something about. Otherwise, you're throwing money away.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, so that part of that 10 hours of Bitcoin.com could be useful for that, even if you don't care about Bitcoin. But what I would say is if you're trying to transition, play MathBot for, 50, 60 levels, something like that.
Okay.
So you feel like you have a good grasp of it. Then go out to freecodecamp.org and go through the JavaScript track. And if you're disciplined enough to do that on your own, just do that on your own. It's gonna take you a lot of hours, right? Let's say a couple hundred hours or something.
Okay.
So you're gonna have to be pretty disciplined to go through that. If you can get through that, so I'm giving you sort of the ideal track. 10 hours of Bitcoin, then Free Code Camp, JavaScript track, go through that. Then what you want to do is start making contributions to open source projects. And it doesn't matter what open source project, just go, you can do some testing, find a bug, fix a bug, because that will make you build relationships with a bunch of really smart, hardworking, good guys that will be shockingly available. I mean, you couldn't pay these guys $100 an hour to coach you and to teach you how to write software. But if you're contributing to their pet project, they'll give you an incredible amount of free coaching and help, and probably even help you find a job. So I would do that. If you want to supplement that and sort of as a an optional track, there are some cool companies out there. One of them is called Lambda School.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, their model's pretty cool because you don't have to pay for it. They just get a chunk of your paycheck until they're paid back. So
interesting.
That's a pretty cool idea.
Well, I think Springboard was basically the same thing. I think they had like a $500 upfront, which isn't crazy, honestly. But after that, like they'll take it out monthly once you get a job, and if you don't get a job within X amount of months, like you don't know it.
Right.
So
right. Yeah. I think those are cool models, and I don't think that if you actually want it, right? I mean, this is only going to work for people that are disciplined enough to sit at a desk for like 3 hours straight and concentrate, right? If you can't do that, you just don't care, and there's nothing I can do for you or anybody else can do for you.
Well, I mean, apparently anyone who's ever had to edit audio,
right, should be able to do that, right?
I am routinely sitting here for 4 hours at a time. All right. Like, I mean, it takes me what I think a 4 hour or like a 2 hour episode will often take like 5 or 6 hours just sitting there meticulously listening, cutting, sliding. It's doing that's not a problem.
Yeah, no, if you can do that, you'll enjoy coding a lot more than that because that's very repetitive, kind of tedious work. Coding usually isn't like that at all. It's much more engaging, I would say.
Nice.
So yeah, man, I think you can do it. And anybody that's listening that's thinking they need to make that transition, just do it. Like, I don't know anybody that's made that transition that regrets it. I know people that have gone back to music after they had a few $100,000 stacked up, but I don't know anybody that's like, oh yeah.
You have a lot more options that you can do once you're in that position. I will say that much.
Right. Absolutely.
That's why I always used to joke with people like, I couldn't play somebody else's music, or like, I could never play with somebody like Britney Spears. I'm like, dude, if Britney Spears asked me to play the spoons in her band, I'd do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because all that money I make, I could invest in the craziest home studio ever and sit in my house and fucking play with myself in the studio if I want to.
Yep.
Sitting on my piles of fat Britney Spears money.
Totally. Yeah. So if Britney Spears doesn't call, learn how to code, and you can still do it.
There you go.
So we got you here. What do you tell us a little bit more about specifically what MathBot is, since, like you said, our daughter has used it. Apparently, I'm going to start playing it myself now.
Yeah, so it's basically this game where you program a robot to move around the screen and solve little math problems. So the idea is, instead of doing something really boring like 2 + 2, and figure out that it's 4, program a robot to go pick up 2 cubes and then pick up 2 more cubes and then put them together and count them and see that it's 4, which is it's just more fun. It's less repetitive. Even little kids enjoy that a lot more than just.
I'm going to be honest. I really like math a lot, so.
Yeah, right on. Well, I mean, if you like math, then you'll definitely like programming, because math and programming are actually the same thing. Most mathematicians now, they work exclusively in code. They're not doing, there is some of the, the Greek alphabet and stuff like that going on, but both are just systems of written logic.
Yeah.
And the overlap is, they're basically synonyms. So if you like math, you will like programming. It's a little bit different of approach. There's different sort of assumptions made with symbols, things like that. But the actual intellectual experience is identical. So so MathBot allows you to learn how to program this robot to solve these little puzzles. It does teach math, but it teaches math as sort of like a side effect, and it teaches programming also, but as a side effect to solving puzzles and having.
I think I've heard you talk somewhere about like it uses like the actual old school Euclidean way they used to teach math as opposed to how they teach math now. Maybe I'm combining something else, but
yeah, absolutely, man. That's exactly right. So until like 1920, I think, everybody learned math through Euclid's Elements, which is just like this textbook that's 2,000 years old. You can still pick it up. Still very, very popular. Like Einstein, for example, learned math using Euclid's Elements. So, and all the way back, right? Like Alexander the Great would have learned math with Euclid's Elements. And it's really a great way to learn math because it is problem solving based. So you're presented with a problem, you get to kind of play with how things fit together and work, and then you get to discover a solution. That's kind of my definition of math, actually, is problem solving.
Well, and one of the things I've always dealt with, like, because I have other parents that I've talked to, like, with kids that dislike math, and it's always killed me that they so often separate math from physics.
Right.
Because physics it's just the visual representation of the math in my experience. Like you're divorcing, you got the stuff that's how you see it. But when you start working with graphs and you start seeing like the physical space and how knowing the math makes things work within physical space, to me it's beautiful, and it adds this whole layer to why am I sitting here going through all of these equations, and like it's just a bunch of numbers and letters. But the minute you realize those numbers and letters can represent something real and physical, it changes it. It makes it something different, and it always killed me that they did that in high school and stuff.
Yeah, totally. Actually, Euclid did that, but instead of using physics, he used geometry and just like if you're trying to make a perfect triangle and things like that. But it's the same thing. It's like you can see how it relates to the real world, and when you discover something, you discover how the real world works. Right? You're like, oh wow. if I was ever in a situation where I needed to make a perfect triangle, I can use circles to do that. That's pretty freaking cool, right?
Yeah.
But the transition that happened in 1920-ish is they went from math as problem solving to math as procedure. So instead of here's a problem, they present you with a solution and you get to learn how to execute this process, right? It's basically you become the robot, right?
Yeah.
Somebody else feeds in the input and you mindlessly, robotically follow a procedure and get a result. And you're not any smarter for it, and you haven't learned how to problem solve any better for it. And you hate it because it's super boring and tedious.
Yeah.
So
Oh God, it was that.
they have absolutely taken something that's supposed to be a fun exploration of the universe and how things fit together and turned it into filling out a form at the DMV.
I got so lucky in high school because I was going to school in New York State when they still had the Regents override policy. And so I spent most of my high school career sleeping through my math classes. I could not stand them. They were boring as hell. I hated, just like you said, processing, going through repeating and all that. But it wasn't that I didn't know the stuff. I just hated doing it. That's why you often wouldn't. And the beauty of the Regents override policy was I didn't have to do anything all year. I could fail math all year. And then whatever I got on the final exam, the Regents exam, if it was higher than my average for the year, it just was my average for the year.
Yeah.
So I'd sleep through the class all year. The teacher would hate me. And then I'd go and get my 98, 99 or whatever on the final exam. And yeah. So.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, smart kids can find ways around pretty much anything.
God, it sucks so
although,
much.
they get better and better at, I would say you probably can't get away with that now, right? Because they have this.
Oh, no.
Probably not.
Your grades are based on even just being in class. Like that alone. Miss a class and you can't graduate. That kind of shit.
Yep.
That's frustrating.
Yeah. Those systems get better and better about just sucking the soul out of anybody that participates. That's why I'm a big proponent of homeschooling.
That's why my kid, if I can avoid it, will never step foot in a school. As a parent yourself who's taken that route, how do you feel about that big paper that everyone's touting out of Harvard right now and the implications of what that's going to be bringing for us?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that these people are that's just their perspective, right? So the paper was basically, we need to end homeschooling countrywide.
I know it's full of shit. My frustration
is
is that people are going to see it, and the fact that it's coming out when it's coming out is going to.
Yeah.
That's my issues. Like, because now that we have all the parents at home who are sitting there struggling doing what they think is homeschooling, which isn't.
Right.
And now they're going to say, nobody could possibly do this. It's terrible. These parents are shorting their kids. They can't possibly do everything these kids need to do, and they're going to It's a frustration because, like I said, the way we see things isn't the way most people see it. Sadly.
Yeah. No. I mean, that is kind of a scary angle. I was actually oddly encouraged by that because I don't know if this is true.
You see it as a threat?
Well, no, because they said 4% of U.S. households are homeschooling, and that is so much higher than I would have guessed. And homeschooling has only been viable and legal for, I don't know, a short period of time, right? Like boomers didn't homeschool. This is a Gen X thing and plus. So it's pretty incredible if we've already hit 4%. And I believe it said that that's more people. I usually get most of my encouragement out of the mouth of the devil these days. It also in that study said that 4% is more people than are in charter schools and I think parochial schools combined.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That part did surprise me.
Yeah. If homeschooling's that big, we're doing great. And you're going to have you would definitely have a revolution on your hands if you try to take people's kids that have already been homeschooling and put them in, once you get a taste of it and you realize how easy it is to exceed the bar as low as it is in the public school system, it's going to be really hard to pry those kids out of their parents' hands.
That's kind of my frustration with it, is that how are they going to, because all the math is on the side of homeschooling, all the studies. Right. So yeah, we do better. So if you want to get into Harvard, the people that put out this study, it's easier if you were homeschooled, but they would like to end homeschool. Yeah. Well, but I mean, that seems to be the end goal. Nobody wants to have the people that are outliers unless they want them under the thumb. Unfortunately, I think homeschoolers aren't easy to get under the thumb. So yeah, and it's getting so much easier for us, right? You have this weirdo at Harvard writing this essay trying to villainize homeschooling. But like you said, the data is coming out every day that shows homeschooling is more effective. The tools available, things like MathBot,
didn't exist, a
Yeah.
decade ago. They're getting better.
Oh my God. I would have killed to have MathBot when I was homeschooling because I was bored out of my mind.
Yep, totally. The resources weren't totally there, but I mean, even with stuff, like video chat, the ability to hire a tutor, if you do hit a subject, maybe you're not a great writer. My daughter is a better writer than I ever was, so I had to hire an editor because she wanted to put out some books.
Yeah.
And, she's like 13 and she's like, I want to write a book. I need an editor. I'm like, well, I don't spend that much on homeschooling. Let's hire a tutor. I got this editor for like $15 an hour, and she only had to spend maybe 30 hours with my daughter total to get her writing to greatly improve. And I'm looking at the math and I'm like, I cannot believe how cheap that was.
Well, we were talking earlier, looking from the Austrian perspective, how much money is wasted on these government systems. And I can't think of any system that wastes more money than the school system. I know how much they take per student, like per year. So it would be way more cost effective for a teacher to go and teach 5 or 6 students like in a course. And then just take the amount of money that we would pay to the school system, pay it to an individual teacher to just do that. You then have brought your teachers down to where they only have 5 or 6 kids that they have to worry about in a year, and then the teachers' salaries would skyrocket. Like 5 or 6 kids, they're making $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's all administrative overhead and nonsense. So yeah, I mean, it does suck that we can't opt out and keep our money, but yeah, I mean, gosh, I would have well over $100,000 in credits with all the kids that I have if they ever implemented that system. I could literally hire that Harvard professor,
right,
and just slap her every morning. Just, hey, good morning. I want you to teach my kids now, and I get to slap you. Hold still, give her a smack, send her in.
Well, and it's frustrating because you have these teachers. I mean, the teachers unions are some of the biggest things we have to deal with as an issue when it comes to homeschooling, because they're the ones that fund it because they want to keep everyone in their system, and they don't realize how badly that system is screwing them over. I wholeheartedly believe that teachers are crazily underpaid for what they do. The problem is it's all that administration soaks up so much money. Like if you just go to the teachers that you can make $100,000 a year just taking on 5 kids tutoring.
Right.
And then you don't have to deal with any of the crap you deal with over there. Like that's something you could do. But the system, it's just, they've got blinders on people that they don't see the actual ways that they could go about doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that in the sense that I think there are some really good teachers that are underpaid, but they're probably the top 10% teachers. I think most teachers are greatly overpaid, and they're glorified daycare workers that,
Oh no! Given, and once again, that's due to the system because that's what the system requires. Like what they're there to do. Like I think if you were to be an actual educator, and I can say my college, I went to Edinburgh University, and I think it officially started actually as a teaching school. So most of the people that I went there with were, genuinely were trained to be teachers. The fact of the matter is while we say that I think most of those people couldn't be teachers, there's definitely a percentage of them. I think that while we say that, there's a degree to which the school system takes that out of them. I think teachers actually would be much better than they are if the system didn't tie their hands at every my sister was a teacher. My mom works in the school system, and what I can tell you is that by 3 years in, they've given up. Like there's just you're a beaten person. You just do what you're told because that's the only way to continue making your paycheck, and you don't have another way to make a paycheck as far as they're concerned. Totally. So it's like maybe they would have been good teachers, but the system doesn't want good teachers. It wants glorified babysitters.
Right. But that does push back, right? That trickles back where smart people that are going into university, they don't choose to major in education because they know they've interacted with teachers, right? Like if you've interacted with 100 teachers and you've interacted with 100 software developers, who do you want to be your peer? Probably not the 100 teachers you've interacted with. So what that means, people that actually go into major in education are idiots in general, right? Not all of them. There's always exceptions to the rule. And so there's probably some brilliant teacher listening to this right now. But if you're actually brilliant, I wouldn't have to tell you there's exceptions to the rule.
Yeah.
the whole idea is if you look at the average IQ of somebody
80-20. How's it going? This is Nikki P, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by our neck of the woods. I sure hope you enjoyed listening to Peace Freqs as much as we enjoy making it. Now, as much fun as it is right now, I know it can be a lot more fun, and the way to make it more fun is to grow that community. Unfortunately for us, growing anything organically on the internet is a thing of the past, and as much as I'd like to dump Irma's college fund into growing the show, that would make me a bad parent. So if you want to help create a bigger, more badass community, stop by upgradetheshow.com. We have monthly and yearly fiat options and one-time and yearly crypto options. But don't go thinking an upgraded community is all you're going to get. All patrons of the show get access to the Freedom Choir, chock full of bonus shows, and our Zoom link to watch our interviews live. So head over to upgradetheshow.com and help us upgrade this freaky little community.
Yeah, I mean, if you take the average IQ of every university degree, right, and this includes really stupid stuff like gender studies, right? You take the average IQ, you stack them up. The stupidest people, the stupidest degree is education. So the bar is really, really low. If you're worried about not being a good enough homeschool parent, just remember the stupidest people in university are the ones that you're dropping your kids off to indoctrinate for 8 hours a day.
We could pull up some George Carlin. Just think of them like the average person out there, and remember, half the population's dumber than they are.
Yeah.
Well, and I have had a lot of conversations with parents since this whole thing started that are home with their kids now, and they're like, I mean, am I doing this right? Is there a way? And I'm just like, I mean, you're doing it, so this is it. Like, there's no magical, like, fancy special skill that you don't have. Like, this is how it's done.
Right. I'm sure it would be like if you showed up to the scene of a fire and you grabbed a hose and you started spraying it down. Like,
you're not hurting.
We've been indoctrinated so much that, like, these people are heroes. They're heroes. I mean, we don't even have a word to describe how special these people are. Surely you can't just participate, right?
Well, you know what's crazy about that? Because I've had that conversation so many times with people. I grew up in a small town. We had a volunteer fire department. All the guys that went and fought fires were guys I went to high school with. Usually weren't the brightest guys, but they did the job just fine. And it's not to say that the job isn't a dangerous job, but the point is why do we? It's not like the job wouldn't happen if we didn't have. Yeah, people can do that part-time in some places.
And that doesn't mean that the 1 in 1,000 dude that, like, kicks in the front door and drags somebody out of the house isn't a hero.
Yeah,
that guy is but not all teachers are heroes. I'm sorry. Most are just, they're just not that bright, and it was the easiest way to make a buck.
You're standing 100 feet away from the building. You got a big fucking hose. It's gonna make it there one way or the other. Just point, because that's what most of it is. Like, I know in high rises and stuff in big cities, it's kind of a different animal. But that's not most of the country. That's a few very specific places where you have very specific needs.
Yeah.
In most places in the U.S., the people got out of the house, and you're just trying to put it out so it doesn't catch the house next door.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that, like, I don't like certain teachers or I don't like certain firemen or certain police.
JW hates everyone. That's the moral of this story.
Right.
You're not part of the 10%. You're fuck yeah.
Right. But I am trying to push back on just the propaganda, right? Because like there's nursing. I would put nursing in this category too. There's so much propaganda to say that these people are super special, and it always ends up being some service that the state provides, right? Like we don't quite do that as much with a lot of other things, right? Like I really, really appreciate oil riggers, right? Without these guys going out there, I know that's a dangerous job. I think it's probably, if you look at the stats, it wouldn't surprise me if it was more dangerous than being a fireman. Am I going to call them heroes? No, but I really appreciate the work that they do. But there's not this constant state-sponsored propaganda to make me worship.
So here's the issue with that. That's crazy. So if you look at the news, you look at Facebook, there's a lot. Like every hospital across the country has laid off their staff.
Yeah.
Now I have one of my good friends and partners in one of my bands. Actually, his his wife. They got married recently. She's a nurse, and she's literally like, I talk to him daily about what she's going through. And the thing is, it frustrates me. It's like, but I know they're not utilizing all of the people that hospital has available. So they're making a choice to overwork the shit out of some of their staff.
Yeah.
There are plenty of other. Mm-hmm. And so it almost seems like, why are they making that choice? Like, why are they choosing? Like, is it because of the optics that they want to keep people focusing on lauding these people?
Right.
You know, like, because I think her job's way harder than it needs to be because of what they've done.
Right. If you actually look what a nurse does during the day, and you can do this with pretty much any field.
Paperwork.
And it's not, you're not going to be that, you're not going to like feel like you need to worship these people. If there was a reality TV show that just followed a nurse around and saw everything that she does in a day, it'd be boring as hell, right? Like nobody's going to go, oh my gosh, this is just incredible. These people are heroes.
Well, we've seen all the videos, all those TikTok videos going around right now that are genuinely pissing people off. Like, so this is what's going on in these hospitals that we're supposed to be like worshiping these people over. They get time to sit and make these thousands upon thousands of TikTok videos doing dumb shit,
right?
Doing choreographed dances.
Well, in this case, it's weird because it's a government system. You have some ER nurses that are working super hard, like you said, that are getting overworked, and you're like really sympathetic. But it's not as if their training for most of the tasks that they do in a day is so incredible that the nurse that works down the hall that's getting laid off couldn't pitch in.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's my frustration.
Like, yes, maybe she doesn't have the training to do intubations, and so that nurse needs to just do the intubation.
Exactly.
But these nurses, they're changing bedpans, they're doing all kinds of stuff that's not highly specialized. And yes, it is possible to have, a little bit more.
And so it almost seems like they're doing something to purposely drive a wedge, like between the classes and that. Like they want us to have that cognitive dissonance where we see this one thing, but we're being told another because we're not actually in the hospital seeing what's going on. So you have the people that are in there that are screaming because they are legitimately being overworked. But dude, that's what's weird to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's definitely some of that going on. And I think what's going on with COVID in general is it's like the hurricanes that hit Florida every year. Every year, or the East Coast, right? But Florida gets hit, I think, more than anybody else. Every year there's hurricanes coming in, and every year it's the worst hurricane season ever, and we're going to lose our minds. And the only reason for that, if you actually peel the onion, is that governors are constantly trying to get their states declared a disaster zone because there's billions of dollars that get poured on them, and they just get this huge slush fund that they can allocate in all kinds of crazy ways if it gets declared a disaster zone. So as soon as there's a slightest hint that this might be a bad hurricane, they would be total morons to not amp it up as much as possible. And a lot of it is public perception, right? So it's not like they have really fine criteria of is a disaster zone or not.
But the incentives are there.
Well, it's a compelling story. Convince the people. That's all you gotta do is convince the people, and then no matter what you do is not enough. So
right.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of that going on with COVID. Even if COVID was a plague, there would be a lot of that going on to over-exaggerate numbers, and
which I have never seen a single number that would ever let anyone believe that, which is weird to me.
I agree.
Like I've been following the numbers since January, and the one thing that really frustrates me that nobody seems to talk about is that every 2 weeks they've changed how we calculate, but they don't ever go back and change the curves.
Right.
So when every 2 weeks you do something that makes the numbers spike, of course it's going to look exponential, but it really isn't exponential.
Right. Yeah. It has been. There's been so many games being played. Like Italy. One of the things that just cracks me up about Italy is that they changed the criteria for admitting somebody into an ICU. So if you were like an 88-year-old woman and you showed up with lung cancer, they would have sent you to hospice before, but now they admit you as a COVID patient. They assume that you're COVID until proven otherwise, right? So eventually, if they even bother to do autopsies on these people or test after the fact, they'll revise the numbers down. But for now, that woman went into the ICU. She contributed to the overflow, the overworked nursing staff, all that sort of stuff. And then when she dies, she's a COVID death. So they've played so many stupid games that.
Oh, I mean, one of the things that's gotten me since is that they pretend that we have the same cultures between all of these nations, where it's like, I can understand why in places like Italy and in China, where they have a lot of intergenerational mingling, like old people and young people together. That's not something we do here in America. We throw them in old folks' homes as quickly as possible. Coincidentally, we've had a lot of problems in old folks' homes, not anywhere else.
Right.
And I think a lot of it is it's just there's cultural things. Like in Italy, they fucking kiss each other on the lips when they greet. Americans half the time don't touch each other if we pay attention to each other at all. Like there are cultural reasons this was never going to react the way it did anywhere else.
Right.
And like why I think they've had to play with the numbers in the ways in which they have played with the numbers. So
yeah, and even right now, we don't have a good reason to believe that it's worse than the flu, than normal flu. Maybe it is. It's possible because we don't have good numbers.
We don't have a reason to believe that.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I would say, look, to those out there that are saying, yes, we're testing and we're getting this, but maybe it's false positives. The tie goes to the status quo, right? You don't get to shut down the economy and terrorize everybody. because it's possible that this is a plague. What you get to do is say, hey, it's possible it's a plague. We're concerned about it. You might want to take precautions like wearing masks and washing your hands more. There's things that you can do when it's not clear and there's kind of an unknown possibility of a threat. But they've shut everything down. They've done nothing but really stupid countermeasures, right? Like everybody's still eating out. It's just your food is delivered. I know those guys don't wash their hands that are in the back kitchen, right? So everybody's door dashing, sitting on their ass, not exercising, not getting any sun. Like this is not the way that you would deal with that. And then, not even wearing masks.
But not JW's family. They're out Laura Ingalls Wildering that shit, just cresting the fields with their pigtails out.
Don't tempt me, Nick. Don't tempt me.
That's exactly right, man. That's exactly. Actually, you know what? I was the freak that was like, when it was here's the thing. Like everybody thinks that I'm like this big, COVID is a hoax. But when everybody else was chilling and not worried about anything, I was the guy wearing a mask and like having Amazon deliver and disinfecting stuff before it left China.
Well, and I've kind of had that discussion with my bosses at work because I think they thought that I was like for the first couple weeks they thought I was crazy, like because I was wearing gloves and I was wiping machines off and like was being very and my position has not changed now from the first time it happened, but I'm not an epidemiologist, so I'm gonna take precautions until we know for sure that I'm not wrong, that I'm like, because if I'm wrong, the stakes are pretty high. I would rather be on the safe side while I have the ability to be on the safe side. I don't think it's any more likely that it's going to kill all the world now than I did back in January when I heard about it in China. But the stakes, if you're wrong, and it's a big game to play. I have people in my life I have to worry about. Honestly, I think me, Liz, and Irma had it in late December. But, there's people they'll tell you that's not possible. And I will tell you just by the numbers I've seen, especially now that we're seeing someone definitely had it in January here because we have death in the first week of February. The fact of the matter is whatever that first person you trace is, it had to be here for months, or at least a month or two before that, because there was probably 2 months where 1 or 2 people had it and you thought it was flu. By the time you notice it, it's far too late. Especially with the incubation period that exists. Like
exactly. I mean, so way back in January, I was looking at this and they were saying that it has an R value of like 3, right? That means it's super contagious, like more contagious than the common cold. And I know how fast the common cold moves across borders, right? There's not like this magic line written on the map.
We know. Well, that's my thing. Like we know it was in China in November. Well, we have global trade. You think it just stood there for 2 months before it got here with all the packages of people that cross borders? No way in hell.
Yep. So there was 2 logical possibilities back then. Either one, it was going to, it was either not as infectious as people were saying, or it wasn't as deadly. And I think now we know it was as infectious as the common cold. It just wasn't as deadly. Because we know, I think everybody is confident that 80% plus of people that get it have no symptoms, right? I don't think anybody's debating that at this point.
No, not at all.
So the fact that you guys are saying maybe you had it, if anybody says you couldn't have had it, that's ridiculous because 80+% of people that have it had no symptoms.
Here's the thing. My wife works for UPS, moving packages.
Right.
I work on jukeboxes and ATMs for a living, touch screens and money.
Right.
The fact that we wouldn't have been like the first people to get it, just given our careers, is absolutely ludicrous to me.
Right.
And back in December, because I remember it was when The Expanse came out, I was the sickest I've ever been in my entire life. And like, I had a night or two where I'm in the basement thinking I might die because I couldn't breathe. I'd coughed myself to death. Genuinely, I could feel my chest like having issues.
Yeah.
Now, it came really fast and hard. Those couple days were really, really rough when I went through it. But I haven't been sick in a decade prior to that. So it's like, it was very noticeable something was not normal when it happened. And, it could have been I had a flu. But, we don't know. Because our government's kept us from getting the tests that would let us know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if there's one thing that is really, really absurd in this whole thing, it's this idea that they can't do enough testing. Like there's the last thing that I saw was like, I watch the news occasionally just to try to keep up to date on the crazy narrative, was that they're saying that they have this shortage of swabs. And it's like, wait a minute, you're telling me that
I can go cut a tree down and shore a sheep myself. Like
exactly. I mean, this is the simplest device that humans could possibly. It's a stick with a little bit of cotton on the end of it. Come on, you're telling me we can't do tests because there's a shortage of swabs? No, I'm not buying it.
You're telling me I can't like just go and get a piece of plastic and pumped out as a stick and throw some cotton on it. Like this, come on, folks.
Yeah. It's, I mean, the excuses that they've had for not doing testing has never made any sense. But I mean, if you think about the things that you would do if you were a halfway intelligent person and you were actually concerned about an epidemic, they haven't done any of that, right? You would tell everybody to wear a mask immediately.
As opposed to telling them don't wear a mask?
You wouldn't shut down the economy. Right.
It won't do anything. When even your brain is going, well, if I breathe into this mask, I can feel the air come back at me, so I know something's being stopped.
Right. Exactly.
Like, and they're like, oh, well, the bugs can get through. Yeah, but when I hit that, the air blows around. Those bugs are just going to blow where the air blows, where the breeze blows. That's how they work.
Yep.
So
yep. And, you know, I mean, if you look, the CDC put out a study, I think 2 or 3 years ago, showing that something like 90% of the value of mask wearing is actually because it prevents you from touching your face. So they know that, right? Like even a homemade mask, even just a piece of tape wrapped around your freaking face is going to remind you, don't touch your face, right? Something is different. And that is going to provide the vast majority of the value in disease control anyway. And these are the people that publish that stuff, right? They did the study. So they know that. Nobody's going to be like, oh, well, we really did think that mask wearing was going to increase infection. It's too ridiculous.
Well, no, then they come out and it's, oh, we just wanted to save them for people that needed them.
Well, that's stupid. But you can still say, like they did recently, save the good ones for people that need them and wear the homemade ones. And because the homemade ones will prevent you from touching your face, you get the majority of the value out of that. That's not what I'm going to do for my family, but still, it's still a lot better than.
Well, it's what we did because I'm personally still not entirely sure about that has any real value. Most of the shit you get like touching your hands, but
exactly.
I you know, the minute we kind of took that tack, Liz went and made us some t-shirt ones because we had the shit around to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
And by that point, it was kind of difficult to find them. The Lions of Liberty just had some dude on who was talking, like he kind of got into the industry of importing this stuff because he had capital to do it, and he got sick back in January and was wondering about it. Or it was maybe it was very beginning of March. Not thinking about it. It was the very beginning of March, and so he decided to start importing shit. And then the thing was crazy. His story, he like went through from when he started to right now every single legal hoop that just started popping up because there weren't any in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he started getting more difficult to get anything in here.
Yeah.
And like right now, he got to a point where like he could no longer get the things because they weren't exporting them from the companies. He could get so like he had to end up having them being made in another country. Like I think it's too difficult to get things from China. And what's weird is the ways in which he said like things you don't ever think about. It's like, you know, a lot of our shipping from China actually happens on airplanes, passenger planes. They just use the excess cargo to ship packages to us. Mm-hmm. Well, since no one's traveling, we're getting less of our stuff shipped here. So all of our overseas shipping's just naturally going to take much longer.
Right.
So, you know, he had a garment guy, I guess he knew, and so he's an Italian guy who knows a garment guy. So I just immediately have a picture of who this guy is. It's one of my uncles. But he you know started having them made in Costa Rica because it's 1 or 2 days to get them from there.
Right.
But then the Costa Rican government gets involved because I think it was something they don't want them leaving the island, but it's like, well, we're giving you jobs, like, and we have a problem paying people. We're actually giving your people money.
Yeah.
The things that happen once government takes interest in anything anyone's doing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if they can do this with the common cold, then I think we will eventually converge on that. Yeah, it was just a normal flu, but look at all of the problems they've caused. I mean, the people that are like, oh, well, maybe it was.
People don't even know it yet, like, because it's working slow. The meat issue, I do not relish what's going to happen in a month or two.
Yeah. I mean, the people that are looking at the death rate and they're saying, well, it's because of all of these really super effective government actions. Like, are you serious? Like telling people to wear masks, having everybody at the grocery store, piling up people in the airports, right? I mean, you saw those photos of the international airports where everybody had to get checked. People were packed in like sardines, not shutting down mass transit, right? All of the things they did would amplify the problem. And
I can feel the burn behind the glass. It was a secret. No one would speak. Goes down so alive. I felt uneasy. I made a run from the room behind the glass. dressed up.
Do you like your libertarian podcast host leather-clad on a motorcycle running from Nazis in black and white? I'm sure my friend Eric in no way resembles that at all, but his Rebel with a Cause podcast is guaranteed to bring you that same rebellious spirit, bringing in guests from all over the political wheel, bringing with it his own personal blend of irreverence and, dare I say it, down-home charm. So head on over to the Rebel with a Cause podcast and begin your own rebellion against bad podcasts.
Oh, yes. That's my frustration with the whole Event 201 thing. Because I'm not one of those people that inherently believes there has to be some giant cabal running things. I tend to think that, like, through history, just human desires have done things enough. There doesn't need to be in back rooms.
Right.
It is odd to me that they had that meeting and then everything that they said they were going to fuck up in that meeting.
Yeah.
Like they fucked it all up in real life. So you had the exact same thing happen that you war gamed for. I can buy the war games happen and it's just coincidence that it happened. But it was 3 months ago. Why did you make every mistake that it said it was going to make? It should have been fresh on your brains as a government to handle these things moving forward. And yet they made every mistake.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
It's super frustrating. And I tend to look for just incentives and say, all right, look, if governors are incentivized to try to get emergency spending, they're going to exaggerate. If hospitals, the way that the hospitals are set up right now, they do get money if they have COVID patients, and they won't get otherwise, right?
Yeah.
And the doctors get to make a judgment call on whether it's a COVID patient or not. So I look at stuff like that and I'm like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of COVID patients, right? And that can explain a lot of it. But then it does get to a point where it's like, all right, I don't know if I can believe it's possible that you people are so stupid you ran out of swabs. That's really pushing the limits.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, because I had a talk about a friend of mine the other day, and he was kind of, you get into like the Rothschild conspiracies and stuff, and I'm like, honestly, all that stuff is easily explained just by, like, there are people that only talk to other people of their wealth category because that's how most people are.
Right.
And you handle the problems that people of that wealth category have, which are not the problems that you and I deal with. They wouldn't talk to people like of the next rung down economically because those people wouldn't even understand those problems.
Right.
You follow Richard Grove at all?
No.
He runs tragedyandhope.com.
I have heard of that. Yeah.
Well, but like the thing is if you spend enough time kind of going through the kind of information he has, all this stuff happens in the open. Like the Event 201, you can get on YouTube and watch everything that happened. It's just most people don't give a shit, and it's like they don't have to lie or hide anything. Most people don't care enough to go looking for the sources. Like all the stuff that they did for the education system, you can go and look and see everything they said they were going to do. As crazy as it is,
Yeah.
and it's so many times it's because they see a problem with the world that they want to fix, and they have a means to fix it.
Yep.
Like they're in either a position of power or have money. Like that's what's scary about Bill Gates. I don't need to believe Bill Gates is a supervillain.
Right.
It's easy enough for me to believe Bill Gates thinks he knows how to save the world and has enough money to try.
Yep. Exactly.
And that in and of itself is scary. So
it's way scarier because if he was a supervillain, he'd probably get bored or something. If he actually believes that.
Right.
And the other thing is that, like, gosh, there's so much that's sympathetic about the Bill Gates sort of position, right? Like I tweeted out a while ago that I've worked with people like Bill. I know
I'd do the same shit if I had that kind of money and thought I knew how to fix the world.
Exactly. And that's the key. Like it's a weird person that is in a position, has a bunch of resources, but says, no, I can see the second and third order effects of this and they're not going to be good. Right.
Yeah.
And as smart as Bill is, he's not that smart. Right. So he's looking at a problem like Jenny McCarthy running around convincing everybody that, vaccines cause autism. Now, it doesn't matter what your opinion is on that. Just know that Bill probably believes that vaccines don't cause autism, right? Like, give the guy the benefit of the doubt.
Last I heard, none of his kids were vaccinated, just for the record.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. I really don't think that's true.
I hope.
I will say from my perspective, right? Like from my perspective, I lived through this whole era just like he did. I was working in software and around the same sorts of people, right?
Yeah.
Most of the people that I interact with are pretty far left. And when you see like all of the ways that the world has gotten better from vaccines, right? And maybe I'm wrong, right? But I'm not Bill Gates. I promise I'm not running a scam. Just take my word for it that I actually believe vaccines work.
My kid has all their vaccines. We've been very clear about that.
Yeah. So
we waited as long as we could, but
right, because you don't need to tax a tiny baby system if you don't have to. So some of that doesn't make a lot of sense. But
if you look up how many kids die now of whooping cough, it's still a lot. And vaccines do help things like whooping cough. And it is a weird situation where I can't vaccinate my new baby right away. I need to wait. And so I'm hoping that everybody around me, and this could be solved with HOAs and voluntary systems. You can bet your butt that I would not live in an HOA where everybody didn't agree to vaccinate for whooping cough.
Just get rid of the voluntary school or the mandatory school system would fix a lot of problems. But
yeah, exactly. But so whooping cough kills a lot of babies every year. Anybody that thinks that it works, and that includes me, thinks that the whooping cough vaccine reduces that quite a bit, is going to be very frustrated when you see, the source of the autism thing, everything else aside, was this big boobied idiot, right? Like, Jenny McCarthy is not brilliant. She's probably, if you had to select for the dumbest person in our society,
her tits aren't even that great.
She'd be a pretty good shot, right? Like somebody that basically their whole career is based around having really big boobs and being on MTV, right? And then you've got, what was the comedian, Jim Carrey, right? So these are like the two people, and the doctor, if you look into, now again, maybe vaccines are dangerous, but this is my process, right? I look at, okay, you're making a claim. You're obviously a couple clowns. Where did you get this from, right? Like you're literally paid clowns, right? They got it from this doctor. That whole study, all of that stuff has been totally debunked. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not dangerous. It just means that it's just like with COVID. It doesn't mean that COVID's not dangerous, but I can guarantee you that if you're scared of COVID right now, you're probably scared because you're a dumbass. It doesn't mean that you're not right. And it's the same thing with Jenny McCarthy being scared because of this particular study. She could be right, but it was a stupid conclusion.
When it comes to vaccines, the thing that I always think about is I don't necessarily have an issue. Like I think a lot of good people do a lot of good work, and I think that there is good work that comes from vaccines. I think that the companies that sell vaccines do some shady shit as companies and with like legal situations. Like the fact that I can't sue if my kid dies, and the fact that they go out of their way to not educate people of the possibility for issues that there are. They hide that shit.
Yes.
Like that's the stuff that bothers me. And that stuff's all easily fixable. Most of those problems are also created by governments.
Well, you can go back to incentives again.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you also have to look at so the fact that you can't sue these vaccine companies. And again, I think the solution is for a lot more decentralization. We need to have neighborhoods of people that are vaccinated and people that aren't, so we can actually figure out what needs to be done here. I'm not for forcing anything.
Exactly.
Because if I did have to force everybody and I had to choose either nobody has whooping cough vaccine or everybody does, I would be that evil dictator that would say everybody has to have it. But I'm also smart enough to see the second order effects and say,
we don't have to.
that it's not a good idea, right? It's not a good idea to remove everybody's freedom and force this thing. And then all of the other second order effects of a monopoly that's now responsible to provide the vaccine, and the fact that there's no free market operating here, and all of the negative things in the judicial system that comes about from that. But the point is, I do think vaccines work, but I don't want to impose my will on people. And I do want people to have the freedom to, I would feel a lot more confident in my position on whooping cough if people were free to do it. And we had a free market in vaccines, we had studies and all that sort of stuff.
You can actually see over time places that do, places. You mean like we should have been doing from the get-go with COVID, where we should have at least taken a few small sample markets and tested every single person in them, so you have an idea of what it works in a specific population.
Yeah,
and then you can extrapolate data from that, as opposed to not having anything that makes sense anywhere. That's my biggest thing. You can take a small population and get some information if you have all of the data on you can extrapolate a small some complete data out. You can't ever extrapolate incomplete data. That doesn't work, because none of it makes sense. So you get complete data for a small place and make that bigger for everyone else.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just it's just basic math shit to me that everyone else doesn't seem to see, and it freaks me out.
Yeah, it does. It freaks me out too, man. I mean, I like I said before we started, I am moving over this. I'm not moving because I think COVID's super dangerous. I'm moving because the speed at which my neighbors became a surveillance apparatus was absolutely
200%.
Yeah, I'm not at all worried about everybody thinks, China has this they have cameras everywhere, all that sort of stuff. we're better at all of that stuff, and that's always bothered me, right? We have more effective cameras on highway systems picking up your license plate. Like all the stuff people are scared about in China,
Sorry to
we
hear.
actually implemented, and we do it. We do it well and effectively. And China's this big cluster of, things that aren't working. But the NSA is really good at tracking this conversation, correlating with it. Like WikiLeaks exposed all of that stuff, right? And the best in the world is the United States. I've learned to live with that. But what still shocked me is none of that's necessary, because all you have to do is terrify the population, and everybody calls what they call in China an angry uncle overnight.
Yeah.
And they're snapping photos and sending them off to the local PD, no matter what you're doing. And so that's far more.
I did enjoy a little bit that that New York City thing that de Blasio set up didn't last very long, because they got enough fucking dick pics sent and middle fingers sent to them that it was useless.
Oh,
That was nice. That was a bright spot. I completely agree.
They like shut down after 2 days because they couldn't go through all of the information they were getting, which was just people fucking with them.
Yeah.
So it was completely useless and a waste of their time to try.
Yeah. That is a little bit of a bright spot.
Right.
That's true. Yeah, that was a good response. Hopefully they won't decide to like fine everybody that did that, or try to track down all of the non-burner number text messages that they got.
So I know with us, like, and we had basically the same thought as you, like, when everything happened, and like I said, to me, it was watching a train wreck in slow motion, because I've been following it way longer than anyone in America was following it, because it was something to follow and take note of. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
You see the way that country's handling things. Things move too quickly in the world, even physically, that nothing's going to stay anywhere that quick. So, and how quickly people, like said, start getting crazy. And I'm like, I don't know enough people with my political viewpoints or anything even resembling like an idea of a care for freedom. Like, I know people within our our normal play dates and stuff like that. Some of those people became very frightening to me, even within our own homeschooling co-op.
Right.
That it's like, people that were generally pretty chill, all of a sudden were like, you got to put your American flag in your front lawn and worship fucking the governor. And I'm like, nope.
Yeah. It flipped quick. It flipped real quick. Yeah.
I'm like, we're moving someplace so we can find those.
So I'm gonna get more rural. Yeah. I'm gonna get more rural and count on Starlink for internet access, and I'll be up in the woods. I'll still be online, but physically I'm not gonna have neighbors for a while.
And that's, I guess, another reason why the music seems less like something to focus on. Because if I move rural, there's no money in that rural. Like, I can do that here in the city where there's places to play. But when you move out in the country, your options become very limited.
Yeah. There's
no way you could do that like as a career. So it's like,
if
we're going to move out of the country, let's find something that I can do and not have to be around anybody.
Another thing you could do is you can teach music online. I don't know how the lag is. I hired
honestly, the part of the issue is that all of the established companies, they just moved online.
Yeah.
Like all my buddies that were teaching before, they moved all their lessons to all those companies. So there's no shortage of people doing it. In fact, there's kind of a glut of people doing it right now.
Right.
It's the same as anything else. Like, you have to establish yourself in the system.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I've never taken a single lesson in anything I do in my life. Like, so I have no credentialing in it. I've managed to make a career as a performer, but there's nothing saying that I know what the hell I'm talking about. And unfortunately, that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But I bet there's probably a couple people listening that are like, yeah, I'm homeschooling my kid, and I'd throw you a few bucks to spend a Saturday, helping them learn something about how to play the guitar.
Because I was actually chasing it down, doing vocal lessons for a couple months. Like I said, in the past year, I've tried every skill that I have to try and see if I could get any interest in it, and it's come up pretty short.
Yeah.
And so it's like, not for lack of trying that I don't have a work from home job yet. It's strictly I haven't found that one thing that I'm capable of selling yet.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. Well, then go to software, man, because there's no shortage of people that are willing to let you work.
That's what it feels like. So it seems as though Liz decided to go hang out with Irma. So who knows what they wanted. I really appreciate you coming and hanging out with us this long. I know I said about an hour, and we've definitely gone over. But I feel very, at least vindicated in some of my positions I've taken so far, especially with the Bitcoin. I was talking to Mr. Sue the other day and was a little contentious, but I'm like, I have to remember, I'm talking to a dude in his 20s that doesn't have a family. and like his entire
his risk tolerance is high.
Exactly. And I remember when my risk tolerance was high, like, you know, when it comes to activism within, like, you know, the anarchist communities and stuff like that. There was a time when I'd been all about going to those rallies and getting picked up on surveillance, and now I'm kind of like, you know, I'm no threat to you, government. I'm not coming to attack you with guns. None of that's gonna happen. Just please leave me alone.
Yep, totally, man.
There's other people that will make those bad decisions.
Yeah, one thing I would say is don't over it. I mean, pretty much everybody will say this, right? I mean, unless you're going to do something crazy like we talked about, which I wouldn't recommend because I don't have the stomach for it either. But in general, don't over invest, and you know, focus on building up, like you are, finding a good income stream before you worry about investing.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, anything I'd be doing now, it's like if I can throw $50 a month, you know, just something to kind of, for me, a lot of it that I really want to do is the exercise of dealing in that economy is something that I feel like, because the economy is going to be fundamentally different in some ways, and I feel like having an ability to participate in it might even make me feel more at ease.
Yeah.
But like, so much of the way that it works is you just put money in there and then you don't think about it. For most people, it's because you're waiting for the time when it's necessary, and that part makes me feel a little ill at ease.
Yeah, I mean, we're just not there yet, right? There's phases to adopting something as money. At some point, like you said, people will just pay in Bitcoin and receive in Bitcoin, and it'll be the thing. But we're still in the speculation phase, and if you're not in a position to speculate on things, then don't sweat it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I thought. It's like, I don't want, I got people making me feel like I'm missing out and like I'm not doing the right thing, when it's like, I don't think that what its value is right now is of value to me personally. You know, by all means, I hope as many Austrians as can get in there, you know, have the value and then do what they're going to do. But most of my income, unfortunately, can't go to long-term stores of value right now.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah, totally makes sense, man. Well, hey, thanks for having me on and letting me talk about mathbot.com. And if anybody is curious about like my Bitcoin stuff, 10hoursofbitcoin.com is the place to go.
Awesome.
You can also hit me up on Twitter at JW Weatherman.
He's a fun Twitter follow, folks. just look for Chewbacca, or is it Chewbacca's other cousin?
Yeah. JW Weatherman _ is me. So
somebody made the mistake of, in that thread, actually doing the other JW Weatherman without the underscore, and he's like, I don't know anything about Bitcoin. I'm sorry, guys. I felt kind of bad because he looked like an older guy.
That's all right. That son of a gun should have given me his Twitter handle 2 years ago when I asked for it.
I see. Okay, it's like that.
Oh, I see. Well, thank you so much for coming on, boss. You have yourself a good day.
You guys too. Thanks.
Begging on your hands and knees, give me the cure now, not later. Tell me a story without a cliffhanger. Give me a cover, give me the finger. Say hello and not hey stranger. And last I checked, I can't remind. My friend yours is one of a kind.
All right, babe, what do you think?
I think that was a fabulous conversation. He's a cool dude. He's knowledgeable about a lot of the things, which is always nice.
You went searching for his stuff.
I did, and he.
And what did you tell me when you read his book?
There were a lot of the manifesto, the maximalist manifesto. It was certainly something. I'm just like, wow, this is crazy. This is like
These are the ravings of a lunatic.
Well, I mean, I'm like I said.
And she's like, and he seemed so normal when we talked to him in the show.
Well, no, it's not exactly that. It's just like I'm not saying I disagree even. It's just it seems like there's so many steps in between here and there, and I'm just like, wow, you guys, you see the whole thing. This is amazing. Like I want to be there with you. I don't see it yet. That'd be cool though.
I've got a kid to raise, and she's just as crazy as I am. So Yeah, no, I was very excited. Like when we endeavored to have this conversation, I've tried a couple times on Twitter to find the right people, and they've never kind of come up. This round, I got the people that I wanted to talk to that were interested.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Because like we repeated it a billion fucking times in the episode. I mean, for me, you're just in a different world when you have kids.
Yeah.
Sorry, all you folks that aren't into the kid stuff, but that's something that's important to us because we kind of backed ourselves into the corner as it is. That we kind of need to deal with it.
But no, it is cool to talk to people that are knowledgeable about Bitcoin, but they're willing to have that conversation with you. Because some people are like, "Well, dude, if you're not on the train, you're not on the train," and I get that too. That's cool, but nuance.
Right on. Well, I think it was a fun episode. We got another fun one coming up next week where we have Mr.
For sure.
Mr. Aaron Harris of the Decentralized Revolution podcast, the Mises Caucus podcast. And despite that, I don't really run with that crew much these days. It was a good conversation. He's a solid dude.
Yeah.
Probably way more interesting than even I was expecting. So.
And I enjoy the heck out of the podcast. I've been catching up on it this week, so it's fun.
I listen to it like I listen to all of them. When a name pops up, I like to hear. I listen to them. Too many damn podcasts for me to listen to all of them.
There are a lot of podcasts, but that is a good one.
I'm trying to think which ones I actually do genuinely listen to. All of them. I listen to all of the School Sucks podcasts.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I typically listen to all of the Drive Time News Blast from the Propaganda Report.
Okay, that makes sense.
But
I've been listening to the History of the Papacy podcast.
Oh, good God.
Because that's interesting. It's just interesting historical stuff.
And I'm the one that was raised Catholic.
I know. It's just so interesting.
Why don't you tell some of the readers some of the other stuff you've been reading? Because I kind of like your reading recap that you did in the last episode.
What have I read since then?
Yeah.
I read Meltdown, Tom Woods, and I also read the Politically Incorrect Guide to American History, which was delightful because he actually narrates the audiobook of that one himself. Friggin' fabulous.
I refuse to listen to anything that he doesn't narrate himself. I've told that to him.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I realize he's super busy and probably doesn't have time to devote to that, but
well, more than that, I don't think he makes any more money off of them. Like he was paid up front for them.
we do love it when he does. Well, that's also true. Oh, and I was pretty excited to see that those are actually available through our local public library. Not that I prefer private libraries to public ones, but if you gotta have the public libraries, at least have some semblance of useful information out there for people, and his books are out there. So
didn't you listen to his The Church and Western Civilization, or is that one you're looking for?
Oh yeah. How the Catholic Church built Western civilization. That book. Also very, very fun. I think that's what got me, because I'd picked up the History of the Papacy podcast, and then I listened to Tom Wood's book, and then I was like, well, now I'm really curious about this. So I went back to the History of the Papacy podcast. That's how that happened, actually.
How is that podcast? I mean, what kind of tack do they take? I know that Tom Woods is a pretty unfavorable look at the modern papacy. We'll just say that.
Yeah, he started at the very beginning with St. Peter, or the Apostle Peter, or that guy. And he's trying to be very sort of middle on the middle of it, not saying this is definitely how it happened, and he I don't think he's necessarily even a Christian. He's just trying to be very this is the historical information.
Oh, I was gonna say is he a traditionalist Catholic, or is he a modern Catholic?
Yeah, no, I have no idea. I'm not even sure he
may not even be Catholic.
Yeah, no, he really may not be, which I would be curious to see what makes you want to even kind of dive that deep into that if you're not actually Catholic. But
well, the strange thing to me is that Tom Woods wasn't raised Catholic, and he
I know.
found his way there. As a former Catholic, I can't imagine ever going back.
Yeah, and I am super curious about it because my my whole spiritual kind of, what am I? Where's my label? It's kind of in flux. So I've been kind of digging into the history and all of the stuff. So it's interesting for me to kind of see what happened to the people who theoretically were there after the fact. There were schisms, and they tried to create all this structure around it. It's really interesting.
Right on. That does sound interesting. Not as interesting as some of the other stuff that's going to be coming out, but we'll We'll be in touch there. I could just sit here and talk about the Expanse books. That's all I would do.
Oh God, I have to read those. I'm super curious now.
But I won't sit here and make people listen to me talk about the Expanse. If you want to do that,
Right.
go and get on our website over at peacefreaks.com, spell it whichever way you like, and check out me and Eric Heiler of the Rebel with a Cause podcast as we talk to each other about the Expanse.
It is delightful because, again,
We're going to finish the Expanse and eventually move to something else. I think we were talking about Future Man on Hulu after that.
oh,
Well, we got about a year of talking about the Expanse because there's 4 seasons so far. And by the time we get through those, we'll probably have another. We only do them once a week, so by then we'll have another season.
nice.
Maybe we'll just start a whole new show for something else.
For Future Man or something.
Yeah, we'll just change the name of the show.
There you go.
But yeah, you can head to our website and you can listen to those. Go check out Eric's podcast. He's good. He's got good stuff over there. He's had a bunch of fun guests.
For sure.
But otherwise, take it easy, folks. Be safe out there.
Thanks for joining us.
You're not gonna throw your catchphrase out there.
Oh yeah, make it magical, y'all. I almost forgot the thing.
What she said. This podcast is a proud creation of the Mad Audio Lab. For more information, check out madaudiolab.com. Peace Freqs is part of the Liberty Hippie Podcast Network. If you like what we do, be sure to check out Homesteads and Homeschools, Free Markets Green Earth, Cannabis Heals Me, and This Week in Liberpods. We're living proof that libertarian doesn't mean washed up Republican.